This morning, the final full week before the election, and the latest poll shows a dead heat in Texas between Biden and Trump. But is that really the case? Tomorrow, the U.S. Senate will likely confirm Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. But this morning, Senator John Cornyn is with us. Is he distancing himself from Donald Trump because Cornyn faces such a close re-election? We'll ask him. Texas is on the cusp of another COVID-19 surge. Is our state any better prepared, though, to handle it this fall? And Dallas has a school bond on the ballot, the biggest one in state history. So why does it say it's a property tax increase? A school board member explains what that's about.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to you. 2 down and 1 to go. This is the last week to vote early in Texas. Polls close on Friday, so make a plan to get to the polls if you haven't already. We'll keep that reminder up at the bottom of the screen here as we take a look at the top political headlines all across the state right now. Let's begin with early voting totals. Texas is leading the country. So far, almost 6 million Texans have already voted. That includes in-person and absentee ballots. For context, that's already more than half of the total votes that were counted in our state back in 2016. If you are voting by mail, make sure the signature on your ballot matches the one on your application to vote by mail. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that Texas counties can reject your mail-in ballot if those signatures don't match. Here's a bigger problem, though. Counties don't have to tell you until after Election Day that your vote was thrown out, so make sure they match. And this isn't Texas here, but it's worth noting. The Republican and Democrat running for governor out in Utah, they got together and recorded an ad saying, "We can disagree without hating each other." Let me repeat that. We can disagree without hating each other. Something to keep in mind as anxiety builds towards November the 3rd. Now to the biggest statewide race you'll see on the ballot in Texas, the campaign for U.S. Senate. The latest poll shows this race is holding steady. Incumbent Republican John Cornyn with 49% of support, Democratic challenger MJ Hagar with 43%, and 7% remain undecided. Quinnipiac did this survey of 1,100 likely Texas voters. Our first guest this morning is Senator John Cornyn, the senior senator in Texas, now running for his 4th term in Washington. A reminder, we had on his challenger, MJ Hagar, a few weeks ago. Senator, thank you for the time.
Thanks, Jason.
Let's talk about the vote tomorrow for Amy Coney Barrett. What do you expect to happen? Is this? We know it's going to be along party lines, but what are you actually expecting in the chamber?
Well, we saw her voted out of the Judiciary Committee, and which was a unanimous vote because all of the Democrats decided to boycott the Judiciary Committee markup. But she'll be voted confirmed on tomorrow, and she's an incredibly qualified person for this post. That's why during the hearings, the Democrats didn't really question her judicial philosophy or expertise or her fitness for the job. They projected upon her some conspiracy theory about what might happen in a future case. So she'll be confirmed, and I think she'll be a great addition to the court. And I know our Democratic friends are not too happy about it because they view the court as sort of an institution that bails them out when they lose elections, they lose votes. They look to the courts to make policy, but Judge Barrett is not that kind of judge, and I'm glad.
We'll wait and see what happens on Monday with that vote. I want to ask you about politics now in the campaign, since we're closing in on the final week and a half here or so. In the past few days, past week, we've seen you try to distance yourself from President Trump, and specifically a few days ago, you told the editorial board at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram that you were against taking money from the U.S. military to help extend the U.S. border wall down on the Texas-Mexico border, but you voted for that with the president at the time. So what should Texans believe right now when it comes to this issue, and where you stand on it, Senator?
Well, they should believe that I am not trying to distance myself from the president. All I said to the editorial board is that when I'd have disagreements, I try to persuade him privately rather than to get into a public Twitter battle. I just think that makes me more effective. And frequently, when we do have those private conversations, the president always listens and sometimes changes his mind. as far as the border wall is concerned, my Democratic friends don't care about border security anymore. My opponent said that Border Patrol was equivalent to the human rights abusers in communist China against the Uyghur minority. To me, that's just outrageous. But the point is that we need border security and we need our defense appropriations bills. And unfortunately, because Democrats chose not to fund any border security, we had no other option but to borrow that from the defense appropriation bill. But to me, border security is part of national security. So I don't see an inconsistency there. I'm just sorry that was the choice we had to make.
I want to ask you about your Democratic opponent you brought up, MJ Hagar. She has been consistently outspending you on TV in the last few weeks, in the last month or so. But in the last couple of weeks, she's been outspending you 2-1. Are you going to counter that? What should Texans expect to see from you in the remaining days before the election?
We're seeing a flood of California and New York and Washington, D.C. money. We saw that starting with Beto O'Rourke's race against Ted Cruz, where Beto raised $80 million, about 60% of it from out of state. There are a lot of people from the East Coast and West Coast who'd like to change Texas, but I'm not for changing Texas. We know the Texas model works, but this is a opportunistic power grab, really, for another Texas, for a Senate seat in Texas. Chuck Schumer said he wants to be the majority leader, eliminate the legislative filibuster. He said everything's on the table, including D.C. statehood, along with 2 more senators, Puerto Rico, and stacking the Supreme Court.
Senator, about 30 seconds left here. I want to ask you about the campaign in the final moments here, too. 6 years ago, I covered your race, and you won against David Alamil by 27 points. Oh. In the final moments here, how close do you expect this race to be realistically come November 3rd?
I think it'll be single digits. As you pointed out, she's outspending me 2-1 with all this out-of-state money. But there's more than money involved in campaigns. You need some of it to defend yourself and to tell your story. But I'm proud of the campaign we've run. I think people know who I am. They understand that I believe in our great state and Texas exceptionalism. And MJ is mouthing all of the things that you hear from the radical left, like a single-payer healthcare system, a carbon tax, which will destroy our oil and gas industry. Those are not Texas values.
Senator, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
Let's revisit that Quinnipiac poll just for a moment here. The race for president in Texas has gotten a lot tighter than the Senate race. In the last month, Joe Biden has moved up a few points to 47%. Donald Trump has dropped several points to 47%. All in all, it's a dead heat here, if this poll is any indication. Ian Mitra is in for Ross Ramsey this morning. Ian's one of the veteran political reporters there at the Texas Tribune. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Jason.
Hey, this latest poll shows that Texas could be very close. We've kind of, seen this all year here, but is that really the case, do you think?
Yeah, that's the ultimate question. I think what we see in these polls, and it's not just this Quinnipiac poll, but other polls too, is just this is a trend that's kind of mirroring other states too, where there seems to be a tightening in some key battlegrounds. And I think what's important to do is look at like when this poll was taken. This was from mid-October, so just before the debate. This was happening just in the just after the first debate and after the issue with the president when he was going to the hospital when he was diagnosed. And so one of the things to remember here is I think this happened before the last debate, where I think maybe you can see some shifting.
I want to ask you about COVID as well, too. We're seeing a surge in COVID cases across the state. Is Texas any better prepared to handle a surge in COVID cases going into the fall than we were back in the spring? Yeah,
well, a lot of health experts say yes, that we are better prepared because there are treatments, whether it's certain medication or therapies that we've kind of learned since the beginning of this pandemic that can help. Obviously, that's not a vaccine, but obviously the numbers are still, are the numbers. And so there's also a younger population who are making up for a lot of these cases too. So that provides some level of optimism. But the key part too is that once the numbers grow and the hospitalizations grow, it still can be a test for our capacity when it comes to beds and hospital units.
Yeah, the entire system as well. Ian Mitra, back to you in just a moment. Thank you.
Thanks.
Coming up, 2 North Texas counties are leading the state when it comes to turnout. 2 traditionally red counties. Will they be bellwethers come Election Day? We'll talk to the elections administrator in Collin County. And if you've early voted, you've likely seen school bonds on the ballot. Are they really a property tax increase like the ballot says? A Dallas ISD school board member explains why that language is there when Inside Texas Politics returns. The Lincoln Project has, in a way, redefined campaigning this election cycle. The Lincoln Project is that group of Republicans who are actively campaigning to defeat President Trump, putting out brutal ads, among other things. Well, on the latest episode of Y'all-itics, one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project joins us to talk about the strategy behind it. Mike Madrid is his name. He's bullish on Texas, and the Lincoln Project, he says, is putting its money where its mouth is. So if your phone is handy, grab it there, open the camera, point the camera towards the QR code on the right side of your screen. It will take you directly to this latest episode. And remember, we drop new episodes every Tuesday. Harris County had the highest total turnout so far of early voters, but listen to this staggering statistic from Houston. 9,000 votes an hour in the first week of early voting. Farther north, though, Denton County and Collin County, they've had the highest turnout percentage-wise. Joining us right now from Plano is the Collin County Elections Administrator, Bruce Sherbert. Bruce, good to see you again as always.
Good morning.
Give us context. How many early votes have already happened so far in the early voting, and how does that compare to 2016, 4 years ago?
We voted almost 300,000 early votes so far, and if you compared it to 4 years ago, it was 238,000 votes.
Wow, and we still have another week to go. How about the mail-in ballots as well, too? You kind of have some indication with the number of applications that you've received.
We've received 43,000 applications for mail ballot, and we have mailed them out. We have already processed 18,000 through our ballot board, and they have about 3,000 more right now to get to. They'll finish that today.
And for context, Bruce, how does that compare to 4 years ago?
4 years ago, we had 21,000 mail ballots. So from 43,000 this time to 21,000 4 years ago.
Wow, that's incredible. Just out of curiosity, have the ballot review committees, have they thrown out any votes yet over mismatched signatures?
On the 18,000 they've reviewed, I've been told by the ballot board judge there was only one that had a questionable signature that they observed. So I'd say that's pretty good odds. It's usually 1/10 of 1% in this county for rejected signatures. It's going to be less than that if that number keeps up like it is.
1 out of 18,000. That's again another incredible number for Collin County. Give us an idea. There's 1 week left of early voting. How long is it taking to vote? Do you expect this final week to see a surge at all in people showing up at the polls?
This whole week, we've had 20 minutes or less wait, just about virtually every single location. It's going to stay that way going into probably the last 2 or 3 days. The last day of early voting is always the heaviest day, and so you're going to see that again, I'm sure, this time. If you're going to vote early, my suggestion is to don't wait till the last day. Just pick a day in between now and then and just go cast your vote. You probably more than likely won't last more than 20 minutes. You're going to have a less than 20-minute wait.
And last question here for you, Bruce. How long do you expect it to take on election night itself to have results from Collin County?
Well, it's normally around midnight to 1 o'clock. I would say because we have more mail ballots, we got more processing going on. We're gonna be going on probably till about 3 o'clock in the morning. By the time you wake up the next day, you're going to have the unofficial totals. It's just there's so much to do. It's going to take a little while to get everything closed up and upload it. But it will be done in Texas, I'm confident, sometime by early next morning.
All right, sounds good. Bruce, thanks for the time. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Something a lot of voters are seeing at the bottom of their ballot is school bonds. And in Dallas, the school district is asking voters to do something that no other district in Texas has ever done: approve a staggering $3.7 billion in bonds. But if you look closely at the end of the proposition on your ballot, it says in all caps, this is a property tax increase. How so, though? These are bonds, not a tax increase, right? So what is this all about? Well, with us now is Miguel Solis, a school board member at Dallas ISD. Good morning to you, man.
Great to be here virtually, my friend. Good to see you.
Exactly. If I vote for these bonds, is this going to raise my property taxes? Because that's the last thing I want to do.
No, no, no. Voters are not being asked to increase property taxes. DISD is asking for the largest bond in the history of the state of Texas because we are critically, addressing the facility needs that we've had for many, many years. And the reason why the language is a little funky is because whenever the legislature passed school finance reform a year back, there was a compromise that was made. And that compromise essentially said that anytime that a municipal institution wants to go after a bond, they have to include the language, there will be a property tax increase, even if that's not actually the case.
So explain why that exists then, because it's a bond, you're selling bonds, you're not raising taxes. So why in the world does that compromise show up on my ballot?
Well, really, Jason, more than anything else, it was just politics. There are fiscal hawks in the legislature who essentially, in order to get a unanimous vote by the House of Representatives and the Senate, had to include language that would essentially say that, if you issue debt and that debt accumulates interest, then down the road you could possibly say that interest would increase taxes. But the way that we have structured this bond over the course of 30 years is very particular about how we plan to sell the bonds and at what rates and so on and so forth. And because we've been so thoughtful, we can ensure that there won't be a tax increase.
Gotcha. We have about a minute left here. I want to ask you, you decided not to seek re-election. You had your last board meeting the other day. Are we going to see Miguel Solis on another ballot in the future?
I don't know, Jason. You always save the best questions for last. Look, it's been an honor of my life to be able to serve the residents of Dallas County through Dallas ISD. I'm so proud of the improvements that have been made in our school system over the past 7 years that I've been on the board. And I don't know what the future holds, but there's one very specific thing that I know it does hold. And that is a lot of time with my family, with my wife, with my daughter, Olivia, who's doing very well after a heart transplant. Good. That's where my focus is going to be. All
right. Sounds good. Miguel Solis, good to see you again, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Appreciate it. One of the competitive congressional races we are watching is in Dallas between incumbent Democrat Colin Allred and Republican Genevieve Collins. Well, they sparred in a lively debate with us the other day. This is the 32nd congressional district making up North Dallas, Lake Highlands, Garland, Saxon, and Wiley. Well, you can watch that debate in its entirety right now at WFAA.com. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ian Mitra is back with us from the Texas Tribune. Bud Kennedy joins us for this segment each week from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And of course, Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer at WFAA in Dallas, is here as well. Ian, let's start with you. And early voting, huge turnout for early voting. We don't really have an idea which way this is going yet. What do you read out of it?
Boy, that's the ultimate question, right? It seems like Democrats are pretty excited about the big numbers, but it's hard to make any big leaps. It just seems like this is an election that everyone's been anticipating wanting to vote in for a while. So, and with the extended early voting time too, it seems like a lot of folks are just really they just want to put their mark on this and move on.
And Bud, we've had a busy week from the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, the debate on Thursday night, a lot of news. Has any of that shifted the vote here in Texas? Has it affected it?
Jason, I think if Texas was in play, I think Texas was in play up until about 9:30 Thursday night when Joe Biden said he wanted to transition away from oil. That'll bring out some oil voters who weren't otherwise, who might otherwise not have been coming out for Donald Trump. Joe Biden has to counter by turning out more voters in inner city Texas. Right now, the suburban vote is still going strong. Some voters had more votes Thursday and Friday than they had the first few days. But the inner city boxes are slowing down. Democrats have to turn out that vote.
That's a good point, Bernadine. Maybe Biden, as Bud said, stirred up the oil patch out there with those comments in Thursday's debate. Do you think that will impact him at all here in Texas?
Well, I think that he is trying to fix that. But keep in mind with this early vote, and I have seen some numbers where they're saying that the Republicans will come out on election day. But these numbers show that people have made up their minds. Now, some of those who haven't, in terms of all of what Biden said, perhaps, but people have already made up their minds and they're voting.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to imagine anybody who hasn't made up their mind for the presidential race, at least. But the Texas Democrats, and their priority, more than anything, they told us on this broadcast not long ago, is to win a majority in the Texas House. National groups are sending a lot of money to Texas to try to do that. Will it make an impact?
Well, I think the money will have an impact. I don't know if it'll be the impact. I think the focus will still be at the top of the ballot, but you know, it's hard to kind of watch anything without seeing these ads. And so I think the message is coming across, and you know, it really just comes down to mood and, you know, the sense of where what people are thinking about how their state's being run. There's a lot of, you know, been some frustration in terms of how the response to the pandemic has gone, and so that could feed into a lot of this vote.
Bud?
Oh, Jason, remember, this is a nationalized race. It's all about the president, thumbs up or thumbs down on the president. People don't know who their state lawmakers are. That's why you get all these TV ads, you know, 12 million from Democrats. So, you know, mid 7 million so from the governor trying to spend to keep Republicans. They're just trying to build a sub-name ID.
Bernadine, final word here.
It all will boil down to turnout. Each party has, and each candidate has to get their supporters to the poll. Yeah. That has been the issue from the beginning. And the voters are geared up. But those candidates and the party must get their supporters to the poll.
Exactly, and turnout is huge. Guys, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as well. We're back next Sunday with more Inside Texas Politics. Have a good day.